You never forget the scream that changes your life. I didn't either. I was just a single dad rushing home with my daughter's birthday cake. I had no idea I was about to walk into a storm that would rewrite everything I thought I knew about courage, pain, and love. The sky was stained gray, with clouds swollen from the threat of rain. The streets of Chicago pulsed with the usual noise of early evening traffic. Brandon Wells, a 38-year-old construction foreman, held a pink box in one hand, his hard calloused fingers balancing it like treasure. Inside it sat a humble vanilla cake with blue icing that read, "Happy 6th birthday, Emily." Brandon was a single dad, not by choice, but by life's cruel arrangement. His wife, Lisa, had passed away 4 years ago from a sudden aneurysm, leaving him to raise their daughter alone. Since then, Emily had become the center of his world. He hadn't dated. He hadn't even looked at another woman the same way. His heart still bore Lisa's shadow, but tonight, all he wanted was to make his little girl smile. He turned down Madison Avenue, a shortcut to their small apartment. It was usually quiet, a line of mom-and-pop shops and closed cafes. But tonight it echoed with something else. A scream. High. Raw. Desperate. Brandon froze. It wasn't the kind of scream people ignored. It was the kind that pierced your skin. He moved without thinking, running toward the sound. Around the corner, he found her. A woman, maybe in her late 20s, was being dragged by her hair across the sidewalk by a man twice her size. Her blouse was torn, blood ran from her lip, and one of her heels lay broken in the gutter. "Stop!" Brandon roared, instinct overtaking everything. The man paused, just for a second, and Brandon seized it. He lunged forward, shoving the man off her. The guy stumbled but turned back like a mad bull. "You don't want to do this," Brandon warned, planting himself between the woman and her attacker. "This ain't your business," the man barked. "She's human. That makes it my business." The fight was brutal. Brandon was a builder, strong and used to lifting steel beams and concrete bags, but this guy fought like a demon. Punches flew. Brandon took one in the jaw, another in the ribs. But he gave as good as he got. At some point, he tackled the man into a street pole, knocking him unconscious. Bloodied, winded, and sore, Brandon turned back to the woman, who was crouched by the wall, shaking. "It's okay," he breathed. "He's not going to hurt you anymore." She looked up slowly, her dark eyes glossy with pain and disbelief. "Why did you help me?" He swallowed. "Because someone had to." Her name was Sophie Morales, a soft-spoken freelance artist who had recently moved into town. The man was her ex-boyfriend, an abusive one she'd left 2 months ago. He had found her again. The police arrived, arrested him, and took statements. Sophie was too shaken to go home alone. Brandon called a friend to pick up Emily from daycare and took Sophie to the ER himself. She didn't let go of his hand once. Days passed. Brandon checked in on Sophie through texts, then coffee visits. Emily grew fond of her quickly, more quickly than Brandon expected. They painted together in the living room, her soft laugh filling the home in ways he hadn't heard since Lisa died. But Brandon felt torn. He had saved a woman, yes. But now he was falling into a bond he hadn't asked for. Guilt whispered in his ear, was this betrayal to Lisa? One evening, Sophie sat with him on the fire escape, coffee in hand, watching the skyline fade to night. "You don't talk about her much," she said gently. Brandon looked down. Lisa, she was everything. Strong. Kind. We had Emily and thought we had forever. Sophie nodded. "And now you're afraid loving someone again means letting her go." He looked at her, his heart in his throat. "I don't want to replace her." "You're not," Sophie whispered. "You're making room for more love. That's what healing is." Brandon stared into her eyes, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was betraying anything. He felt like he was living. But life had one more test in store. Sophie's ex, released on bail, showed up at her apartment. This time, Sophie called Brandon before the man could hurt her. Brandon, without hesitation, sped to her place. But things escalated. Her ex, high and desperate, pulled a knife. Brandon could have run. He could have called the police and waited. But he saw the fear in Sophie's eyes and knew, this wasn't just about protection. It was about making a stand once and for all. He stepped between them again. And this time, he got stabbed. Not deep, but enough to knock him down. Before her ex could strike again, Sophie grabbed a lamp and hit him across the head, screaming until neighbors poured in and the police arrived again. Brandon was rushed to the hospital. Sophie held his hand the whole way. 2 months later, the sun lit their modest backyard, where Emily's laughter echoed as she ran around in her princess dress. Sophie sat beside Brandon on a bench, her hand in his. His stitches were gone. His heart, healed in more ways than one. Emily told me she wants me to stay forever, Sophie said. Brandon smiled. So do I. Tears filled Sophie's eyes. I didn't believe in angels. Not until you walked into that street. And I didn't believe in second chances, Brandon replied, until you walked into my life. And so, what began with a scream ended in love. Because sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is step in for a stranger. And sometimes, the reward, is family. I'm Brandon, the single dad who risked everything for a stranger. But I didn't just save her. She saved me too. If you've ever lost love, if you think your story is over, it's not. Sometimes the second chapter is better than the first. You just have to be willing to turn the page.